Machi Koro was designed by Masoa Suganuma and published by IDW Games, Pandasaurus Games and Grounding as a city-building dice game where you have just been elected mayor, which is great, except that the people have some pretty big demands, which is understandable considering that your city is nothing more than a wheat field and a bakery. So it's your job to roll your die, collect your money, and build more buildings with the ultimate hope of building the 4 key landmarks needed in order to become the greatest city of the region and win the game. Machi Koro has been a strange roller coaster for me over the years. 5 years ago when I first got into the hobby and I first played it, I thought it was one of the greatest games I had ever played in my life. 5 years later, does it still hold up as well? Let's find out. The theme of the game of where you have become a mayor and you are trying to build up Machi Koro into the best city of the region is almost completely pasted on. There are a couple cards that kind of gives you a slice of theme. In particular, cards like the cafe and the family restaurant. When somebody else rolls that trigger number, they are paying you a certain amount of coins, kind of representing them visiting your cafe or restaurant. There's also a couple cards like the cheese factory and the furniture factory that allow you to get a certain amount of coins depending on how much of another type of building that you have, basically to represent them producing various goods based on how much of a source that you have. So cards like that add a little bit to the theme, but for the most part, it's just cards with abilities and trigger numbers. The components, on the other hand, are for the most part very nice. The only complaint that I have is the quality of the cards itself, not necessarily what's on the cards, but the physical cards themselves. As you might be able to see it here, they're very thin and they seem to be very prone to bending if you mishandle them. In fact, you might be able to see it here. Mine are really bent out of shape. They cannot lay flat anymore, no matter how many times I've done it. But that could also be because the amount of times I've played this over the years. But that is a thing you'll need to keep in mind. These are thin cards, so they could be bent if you are not careful. In terms of what's on the cards, I think works very well. The text of the abilities and the titles for the cards are very easy to see. The cost on the cards is very easy to tell apart from the rest of it, especially considering it's actually a black text within a coin, so it's very easy to tell. So you shouldn't have any issues with seeing either of those, even if you are colorblind. The coins themselves are also very nicely done. They're different colors and of different sizes, so that if you are colorblind, you should be able to tell which coins are which because of the different shades on them and because of the different sizes. The dice are also very nice quality. They're very well ingrained, so they're going to last a long time. So the dice are great, the coins are great. The text of the cards are very well done. You shouldn't have issues with seeing that. The only issue I had was with the quality of the cards. But other than that, the components, for the most part, are very nice. The game is also one of the easiest games to teach out there. It's very light. On your turn, you roll a die. You see if anybody has a building that triggers on that number, and if it triggers and if it's on the correct condition, then you get the benefit from it. And after everybody that has earned their money gets their money, if you want to, you can buy a building. If you don't want to, that's your turn. The most difficult part of playing this game is honestly just remembering when the different buildings trigger. Like greens trigger only on your turn, blues on anybody's turn, reds only trigger on somebody else's turn, and purples only on your turn. Other than that, it's one of the easiest games to play out there. The gameplay is really a mixed bag for me nowadays. There is still quite a bit that I do like about how it plays out, but I have found some things that I actually don't like about it. I'll go over those first. First of all, there is a ton of luck in this game, especially at the beginning. It is sheer luck of whether you manage to roll the number that you want or not. At the beginning of the game, you only have a wheat field and a bakery. On your turn, you have a 50% chance of rolling what you want, and on anybody else's turn, you have a 16% chance, because some buildings will only trigger on your turn. So at the beginning of the game, most likely you are not going to be getting a whole lot. Most of your money is going to be generated on your turn. However, there are two main ways to mitigate the luck factor. The first one being at the beginning of the game and even throughout the whole game is to buy a wide variety of buildings with various trigger numbers. That way you have, as the game goes by, you have more and more chances to actually have a number rolled that will benefit you. The other way to try to help mitigate the luck factor is to buy the radio tower as quickly as possible. The thing is, it's the most expensive landmark in the game, but it makes sense considering its ability allows you to re-roll the dice once per turn if you didn't like the result. Which is a nice building. It does give you a little bit more control over the luck factor of the die, especially if Lady Luck tends to not favor you. But just two ways to mitigate it, I'm not sure could make up for how much is in there, for some people at least. Whether or not it's too much luck is really going to depend on a person's taste. For example, I have a pretty high tolerance of luck, but there may be others who really can't tolerate how much luck that would be in here because everything you do, every chance you have of earning money is determined by rolling the die. And it can be frustrating especially when you try to put a lot of money into getting like one or two sets of buildings to get a big score, and that rarely ever gets rolled. And I have personally had games where I've put quite a bit of money into a couple sets of buildings, and those almost never ended up coming up. So, depending on how much tolerance of luck that you are, this could be a turnoff. Even if there are a couple ways to mitigate it, depending on the person, it may not be enough. The other thing I'm not a huge fan of is that the building's abilities are ho-hum, if not boring, for pretty much all of them. They're all based around get a coin, get 3 coins, get a coin from whoever rolled a die, get 2 coins from everybody. The only buildings that I really found to be interesting were from the landmarks. And even then, they're not spectacular. They're roll 1 or 2 dice, or your red hit symbol and cup symbols gain an extra coin. If you roll doubles, dig another turn. Or the radio tower, re-roll, or you can re-roll 1 time. And because the building's effects really are for the most part boring, it does kind of downgrade the experience. With all that said, there is quite a bit about this game that I still found enjoyable, and I think some people will grab onto. For instance, the simplicity of just rolling a die, earning money, and buying buildings is going to have a fairly wide appeal, I think. Because those of you who want to play a game but don't want to have to go over all those rules explanations constantly and just want to sit down and play something simple, maybe not even think too much about it, this is one you'll gravitate towards because of the simplicity of it. I also really like the idea of having different colors for buildings, meaning that they trigger at different times. The blues may trigger on everybody's turn, but their abilities may not be that great. The greens are really good, but they only trigger on your turn. The reds only trigger on when somebody else rolls it, but it benefits you because you get to steal something from them. Just those slight variations of what happens when the building goes off and when really can help you open up the strategy of the game a little bit. Not a ton, but it does help it open up a little. In addition to that, I also really like the idea of the landmarks, especially with the fact that you don't have to build them in any particular order. You don't have to go from cheapest to expensive or expensive to cheapest. You can open them up any way you want. You can choose to go for the radio tower first, and then the train station, and then the mall, and then the amusement park. You can get the amusement park first, you can get the train station first, and then go up from there. You can really build them any way you want. And because of that decision making of when you want to build up your landmarks also a little bit can help open up the replay value and also help you develop a little bit more tactical feeling. Do you want to get the train station first so you can maybe be the only one for a little bit to get those higher ranked buildings? Do you want to stick with the low buildings but get the shopping mall? Maybe you will be able to stack up a couple of the greens and the reds and make bank off of that. Like I said with the radio tower, do you want to get the radio tower to get a little bit more control about the luck of the die roll? Or maybe do you want to increase your odds of maybe getting more turns, getting further ahead of everybody else with the amusement park? Just the little abilities on the landmarks really can help open up the strategy some more, and because you don't have to open them in a specific order, like I said earlier, it helps increase the replay value a little. Now, going back to the luck factor for a second, there is a little bit of a benefit that if you don't get what you want on the die roll, you're not going to be sitting there for 15-20 minutes waiting for your turn just to have you roll a die and not do anything. Turns go by incredibly fast in this game. The game does not take long at all. The box says 30 minutes. I think when everybody knows what they're doing, 30 minutes is going to happen more often than not, because like I said, turns go so quick. You roll a die, pick a bill, earn money, buy a building if you want, next player. Keep going and going and going. And if you get messed over, it's not like you're going to be waiting around to try and get some more money again. That being said, like I said before, there is a ton of luck even with a couple sets of mitigations, and it can be really frustrating when you go for something and you get hosed over by luck more often than not. In terms of tactics and strategies for the game, there really is none. This is more meant to be a casual city building game, where you don't really need to think too much about it, where you just sit down, you roll some dice, and you build buildings. There are a couple cards that you can use to combo off of each other, like the ranch and the cheese factory, or I believe it's the forest and the furniture factory, and the orchard with the fruit and vegetable market. You can use those cards to kind of try to create such a big combination and a big payout, but everybody has access to those cards, so everybody has an opportunity to create those combinations. And in terms of the replay value, there's a little bit there, but there really isn't much. Like I said, you have a little bit there in which the order of how you build the various landmarks and how you want to use them. You also have a little bit of replay value with the different buildings, the different types, but everybody has access to the same buildings, and the same buildings are going to be used for every single game. There's no buildings that are going to be left out, no new ones are going to be brought in, so there's not really going to be any excitement ooh, what buildings are going to be used this time. They're all going to be the same. That being said, depending on how the dice are feeling for you that day, there is going to be a little bit of variation in what order the different types of buildings that you buy, which can also lead up to the differences in what order do you want to build the landmarks. So there is a little bit of replay value there, thanks to the luck factor, believe it or not, but it would have been a whole lot better if there had been a whole bunch of different buildings and you don't get to use all of them. You have to leave some out. You can bring a variety of different ones in. I feel like that would have increased the amount of replay value of the game a whole bunch. Overall, Machi Koro has really slipped for me over the past few years. That being said, I do not think that it is a bad city building game. I do think that if you are more of a casual gamer and you're looking for something that doesn't take very long, really easy to teach, and you just sit down, you play, and you don't really need to think too much, you want to play a game while having a chat, this is one I think you can pull out, and I think you would have a good time with it. If you are more of an in-depth gamer and you want a bigger city building game, you want a whole bunch of varieties of paths, and you're not a fan of the luck factor especially, then I definitely would not recommend this. You would definitely have a bad time with it. But like I said, if you don't mind high amounts of luck, or if you're just looking for something that's more casual in the sense, then maybe you might find enjoyment with this. I'm going to give Machi Koro a 6 out of 10. I will say though, I do think this is a game that I think you should go out and play it first before you decide whether or not you want to buy it. So those are my thoughts on Machi Koro. With all that said, what are your thoughts on it? Leave them in the comments below. Maybe we can have a conversation. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you want to know my thoughts on more games, or if you just want more videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more tutorials, reviews, and unboxings. Thank you all as always so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.